At Dieppe in 1942, Allied tanks were massacred by gravel and concrete. It was a humiliating failure. 2 years later, they returned with a fleet of mechanical monsters, Hobo's Funnies. The generals thought they were a joke. The Germans learned they were a nightmare. British commanders laughed at Hobo's Funnies until they saved D-Day from disaster. August 19th, 1942, 5:30 hours. The shingle beach at Dieppe, France. The steel hull of the Churchill tank Cougar lurches violently, throwing the crew against their stations. Outside, it's not a beach, it's an abattoir. Trooper Ken Stedman, the gunner, presses his face to the sight, but all he can see is smoke, pulverized concrete, and the bright, terrifying flash of an 88mm anti-tank gun. The sound hits them a fraction of a second later, a deafening crack thump that makes the 38-ton tank shudder. They are supposed to be supporting the infantry of the 2nd Canadian Infantry Division. But they aren't supporting anyone. They are drowning in stone. The tracks of the Cougar spin uselessly, whining at a screaming pitch. They were told it was sand. It's not. It's loose, fist-sized gravel that acts like a billion rolling marbles under the immense weight of the tank. The tread won't bite. They are trapped, 30 yards from the water's edge. All along blue, red, and white beaches, the same nightmare is unfolding. The new Churchill tanks, the great hope of the raid, are being systematically butchered. Their tracks are thrown by the chert, they are immobilized, and the moment they stop moving, German gunners in the cliffs zero in. A direct hit penetrates the turret of a nearby tank. There is a muted flash, and then a thick, oily black smoke pours from the hatches. No one gets out. Even the few tanks that, by some miracle, find traction are met by an impassable 10-foot-high concrete sea wall. The infantry are pinned behind it, being ripped apart by machine gun fire. But the tanks can't climb it, they can't smash it. They just sit there, engines roaring in neutral, presenting their flat, vulnerable armor plates to the German gunners. They have become 38-ton iron coffins. This is Operation Jubilee. And it is a bloodbath. The planners in London had assumed conventional tanks could simply roll onto a fortified beach, smash the defences, and support the infantry. They were catastrophically wrong. Watching from the destroyers offshore, the commanders are horrified. They are witnessing the complete, abject failure of armour in an amphibious assault. Of the 29 Churchill tanks that attempted to land, every single one is lost, destroyed, captured, or scuttled by their own crews to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. The cost is staggering. 3,367 Canadians are killed, wounded, or captured in just 9 hours. The Royal Regiment of Canada is annihilated. The South Saskatchewan Regiment ceases to exist. It is the single darkest day for the Canadian Army in the entire war. In London, the after-action reports are grim reading. But amidst the blame and the political fallout, one man studies the reports with a different eye. Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Churchill sees past the failure. He sees the brutal, necessary data. The Germans, he notes, fought with terrifying efficiency. But the real enemy was physics. It was chert. It was concrete. It was barbed wire and anti-tank ditches. The problem wasn't the bravery of the men. It was the inadequacy of their tools. The Dieppe Raid proves, unequivocally, that a 20th-century tank cannot fight a 15th-century castle wall. It proves that a million-pound war machine can be defeated by a 6-inch deep patch of loose gravel. To win the war, the Allies won't just need more tanks, they will need different tanks. They need tanks that can swim, tanks that can lay their own roads, tanks that can breathe fire, and tanks that can obliterate a concrete bunker in a single shot. They need a fleet of mechanical monsters. And to build them, Churchill will have to resurrect the career of one of the most brilliant, rebellious, and disobedient minds in the British Army, a man whose eccentric ideas had already gotten him fired. October 4th, 1943. An officer's mess, somewhere in southern England. The laughter is rich, condescending, and just loud enough to be heard. Over lukewarm bitters, officers of the elite Guards Armoured Division are trading stories. They're talking about Hobo's circus. They describe a recent demonstration they were forced to attend a tank with what looked like a gigantic, rotating rolling pin on the front, whipping chains at the ground, another that carried a massive roll of carpet, a third that just spewed fire. Utterly ridiculous. One captain scoffs, straightening his tunic. It's not war, it's a parade of mechanical clowns. They're funnies, that's what they are. The man at the centre of this mockery is Major General Sir Percy Cleghorn Hobart, and he is, by every definition, a military outcast. Hobo, as he's known, is a man of blistering intelligence and zero political tact. He is a visionary of armoured warfare, the original architect of the 7th Armoured Division, the Desert Rats. He trained them in the blistering Egyptian heat, teaching them to fight like a naval fleet on a sea of sand. But his superiors found him abrasive, insubordinate, and un-officer-like. He was, they said, mad. General Wavell, hounded by Hobart's demands for more equipment and his radical ideas, sacked him in 1940. At 55, Hobart's career was over. He was sent home in disgrace, a brilliant mind relegated to the Home Guard in his local village of Chipping-Campden as a corporal. But Winston Churchill had a long memory and a deep appreciation for fellow mavericks. After Dieppe, he knew exactly who he needed. He pulled Hobart from obscurity, leaped him over the military establishment that loathed him, and gave him a new, seemingly cursed command, the 79th Armoured Division. The 79th was a paper unit, formed from the remnants of a failed infantry division. The military brass saw it as a dumping ground. Churchill saw it as an R&D department. Hobart's mandate was simple and absolute. The lessons of Dieppe. Solve them. Hobart, vindicated and burning with purpose, turns the 79th into the most bizarre fighting force the world has ever seen. He doesn't recruit tankers. He recruits engineers, scientists, and free thinkers. He gathers his team at Frimley Park, and instead of battle plans, they study physics problems. The problem isn't, how do we fight German tanks? The problem is, how do we cross a 10-foot seawall? The problem is, how does a 30-ton tank cross rain-sodden clay without sinking? The problem is, how do you clear a minefield while inside the tank at 4 miles per hour? Hobart and his engineersmen, like Lieutenant Colonel A.M. Binney, who designed a bridge in his bathtub, begin to invent. They take the solid, reliable chassis of the Churchill and Sherman tanks, and they mutate them. The laughter from the regular armoured divisions grows louder. They see the 79th's new insignia Black Bull's head, snorting fire, and they mock it. These aren't proper tankers. They don't practice gunnery or formation driving. They practice laying carpets and blowing holes in concrete. High-ranking commanders, like the formidable American General Omar Bradley, are invited to demonstrations. They are not impressed. Bradley, in particular, finds the Funnies to be a Rube Goldberg distraction. He sees them as a waste of resources, time, and, most importantly, tank chassis that could be used for real fighting. He politely, but firmly, declines them for the American assault sectors. They will use their own methods, raw courage, air power, and standard-issue Sherman tanks. But the British and Canadian commanders, with the ghosts of Dieppe fresh in their minds, are not so sure. They watch Hobart's creations, and they begin to wonder. Hobart, immune to the mockery, works his men to the bone. He knows what's coming. He knows that on a single day, all the abstract problems of physics on his blackboard will become a matter of life and death for tens of thousands of men. The Funnies aren't for parades. They are the keys. They are the only way to unlock the most fortified coastline in human history. Spring 1944. Secret testing grounds, Suffolk, England. The ground erupts in a continuous, deafening WHUMP, WHUMP, WHUMP. This is the Sherman crab. From the front of a standard M4 Sherman tank, a long, rotating boom spins 2 heavy chains tipped with steel flails at over 140 revolutions per minute. They strike the earth with such percussive force that they detonate any mine buried in their path. The sound is a rhythmic, mechanical roar of death. For the men of the 79th operating it, the work is hellish. The noise inside the hull is indescribable. The vibration shakes fillings loose. The flails throw up a cloud of dirt and debris so thick the driver has to navigate entirely by gyroscopic compass, praying he doesn't veer off the designated safe lane. But it works. It carves a 10-foot wide path through a German minefield at a steady 1.5 miles per hour, leaving a trail of detonated earth behind it. Problem: minefields. Solved. Nearby, a different crew demonstrates the Churchill Crocodile. It looks like a normal Churchill tank, but it tows a 6.5-ton armoured trailer holding 400 gallons of jellied gasoline. A command is given. The co-driver, who now doubles as the flame gunner, fires. A pressurized jet of liquid fire a coherent stream, not a spray shoots out 120 yards. It's a torrent of 1,500-degree hell that splashes onto the target a derelict concrete bunker and sticks like wallpaper. It seeps through observation slits, pours through ventilation shafts, and incinerates everything inside. The psychological terror is as potent as the heat. Problem: bunkers and fortified infantry. Solved. But the true heart of Hobart's genius is the AVRE armoured vehicle, Royal Engineers. This is the direct descendant of the Dieppe failure. It's a Churchill tank, but its main gun has been removed. In its place is a bizarre, short, fat-barreled mortar that can only be described as a flying dustbin. This is the 290mm petard mortar. It's a weapon of pure, focused demolition. Its 40-pound projectile, nicknamed the Charge Demolition No. 1, has zero accuracy beyond 80 yards. It doesn't need it. It's designed to be driven directly up to a 10-foot concrete seawall, place its stubby barrel against the obstacle, and fire. The resulting explosion is not a penetration, it's a concussion. It's designed to shatter concrete, blow steel doors off their hinges, and create a breach where none existed. Problem: the Dieppe seawall. Solved. And the AVRE is a multi-tool. If it's not firing its petard, it can be fitted with other attachments. A crew demonstrates the small box girder, SBG bridge. A 30-foot, 3-ton folding bridge is carried on the front of the tank. The AVRE drives up to an anti-tank ditch, and in less than 90 seconds, a series of hydraulic arms unfolds the bridge and drops it neatly across the gap. The tanks behind it don't even have to stop. Another AVRE lumbers past, this one carrying a giant bobbin, a 10-foot wide reel of canvas, and steel-reinforced matting. It drives onto a patch of soft mud. The bobbin unspools under its own tracks, and the tank literally lays its own road as it goes. Problem: the loose shingle and soft sand of Dieppe. Solved. Finally, the most secret and most ambitious of them all, the duplex drive, or DD tank. At a secluded lake, a normal-looking Sherman tank drives toward the water. As it approaches, a massive, 7-foot-high canvas screen, like a collapsible wading pool, springs up around its hull. The tank doesn't stop. It rolls directly into the water, plunges deep until the water is lapping at the top of the screen, and then it floats. In the rear, 2 propellers, driven by the tank's own engine, engage. The 32-ton war machine is now a boat. It chugs across the lake at a steady 4 knots, its gun still operational. Problem: how to get tanks ashore in the first wave with the infantry, without a landing craft having to beach itself. Solved. Hobart has built his Menagerie. It is a collection of the strangest, ugliest, most specialized killing machines ever conceived. They are the keys. Each funny is a specific solution to a specific problem that had cost thousands of lives at Dieppe. The American commanders, committed to their own doctrine, watch the final demonstrations and remain unconvinced. The funnies are too specialized, too complex, too weird. They will rely on standard tanks, amphibious trucks, and pure firepower. Field Marshal Montgomery, however, watches Hobart's circus perform, and he orders them all. May 1944. The 79th Armoured Division is hidden in sealed-off coastal camps around southern England. Their strange vehicles are loaded, under heavy canvas and camouflage netting, deep into the holds of specialized landing craft. The men are briefed. They will not be fighting as a single division. They will be broken up, their funnies, attached piecemeal to the assault waves of the British and Canadian divisions. They are the locksmiths, the tip of the spear, and they are sailing for Normandy. June 6th, 1944, off 6:30 hours. The English Channel, 5,000 yards off Sword Beach. Inside the cramped, fetid hull of a landing craft tank, LCT, Sergeant Arthur Harrison of the 13th 18th Hussars grips a steel bulkhead. His knuckles are white. For 12 hours, his 32-ton Sherman duplex drive tank has been his prison. The air is thick with the stench of diesel fumes, seawater, and vomit. All around him, the entire amphibious invasion fleet is a deafening orchestra of chaos, the deep, guttural roar of thousands of engines, the high-pitched shriek of naval shells passing overhead, and the constant, terrifying crump of German artillery finding its range in the water. 15 minutes to launch, the naval officer bellows. Harrison's crew commander, Lieutenant John G. Anstey, nods, his face pale green in the dim red light. Right, lads, screens up. With a hiss of hydraulics, the 7-foot-high canvas flotation screen rises from the tank's hull, locking into place. The crew performs their checks, their hands moving with practiced speed. They are, in effect, turning their tank into a bathtub. 5 minutes. The LCT lurches as it slows, wallowing in the 6-foot swells. The naval bombardment has reached a crescendo. The entire coastline of Normandy, still just a dark, menacing smudge, is lit by a continuous, strobing line of orange explosions. Prepare to disembark. Good luck, hussars. The bow ramp of the LCT slams down into the churning water with a deafening clang. The grey, angry Atlantic surges into the hold. Driver, advance! Anstey orders, his voice tight. Harrison's driver engages the gears. The Sherman lurches forward, down the ramp, and plunges bow first into the sea. For one heart-stopping second, the tank dips, and a wave crashes over the top of the canvas screen. The bilge pumps inside the hull scream as they fight the influx of water. But the screen holds. The tank bobs to the surface, its engine note changing as the propellers engage. They are afloat. They are a tank, swimming in the English Channel. All around them, the rest of their squadron is doing the same. Dozens of floating Shermans, their guns pointed at the shore, chugging slowly toward the smoke. They are the first wave. 7:25 hours. Sword Beach. The men of the 8th Infantry Brigade and the South Lancashire Regiment are running for their lives. They've just hit the sand, and the German response is instantaneous. MG-42 machine guns, hidden in concrete pillboxes, rip the beach with tracer fire. Mortars rain down. It's Dieppe all over again, for about 5 minutes. Then, emerging from the surf like mechanical sea monsters, come the DD tanks. Their screens collapse with a thwack, water pouring off their hulls. They don't stop. They roll onto the wet sand, tracks biting, and their 75mm main guns open fire. Crack! A high-explosive shell smashes directly into the aperture of a German pillbox. The MG-42 falls silent. Crack! Another shell hits a casemate. The tanks are doing exactly what they were designed to do: provide immediate, direct, heavy fire with the first wave of infantry. But behind them, the main obstacles are still there. Minefields, concrete walls, anti-tank ditches. Crabs! Make way for the crabs! A beachmaster roars. The next LCTs hit the sand, their ramps dropping not into water, but onto the beach. A squadron of Sherman crabs the flail, tanks rumble out, booms already spinning. WHUMP, WHUMP, WHUMP. They advance past the infantry, ignoring the small arms fire pinging off their armour. They deliberately, mechanically, beat the earth to death. Mines detonate in spectacular plumes of black smoke and sand, clearing 0-foot-wide lanes. The infantry, who had been pinned, now have safe corridors to move through. Further down, on Gold Beach, the scene is even more dramatic. The 69th Infantry Brigade is pinned down by a battery of 88mm guns. But here come the AVREs. A Churchill AVRE, fat and low to the ground, ignores the shells and drives straight up to a 12-foot concrete sea wall, the very obstacle that had doomed the tanks at Dieppe. It stops. The co-driver loads the petard mortar. With a sound like a giant cough-whoomp, the 40-pound flying dustbin arcs 50 yards and detonates against the concrete. The wall doesn't just crack, it vaporizes. A 10-foot section collapses into rubble. Another AVRE lumbers over to a wide anti-tank ditch. With whining hydraulics, it deploys its 30-foot small box girder bridge in less than 2 minutes. The follow-on tanks of the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry don't even slow down. They pour over the bridge and into the fight. On Juno Beach, the Canadians are meeting the stiffest resistance of all, but the Funnies are there with them. Churchill bobbins lay carpets of steel-reinforced canvas over patches of soft, sinking sand, creating instant roads. Crocodiles, towing their trailers of fire, crawl up to fortified houses and let loose 1,500-degree jets of flame, forcing immediate, terrified surrenders. This is not a conventional battle. It is a work of applied, brutal, mechanical engineering. Hobart's mad ideas are working. The circus has arrived, and it is systematically dismantling the Atlantic Wall, one bizarre machine at a time. The laughter from the regular army has stopped. June 6th, 1944. 5:50 hours. The English Channel, 10,000 yards off Omaha Beach. The sea is a nightmare. A sharp, 6-foot chop, whipped up by a force 4 wind, crashes over the bow of the American LCTs. Inside the hold of LCT 600, the men of the 741st Tank Battalion are already soaked, sick, and fighting to keep their Sherman DD tanks from breaking their moorings. Their orders are the same as their British counterparts: launch at sea, swim to shore, and support the first wave of the 1st Infantry Division. But a fatal decision is made. The seas are too rough. The German artillery is already finding the range of the transport ships, and the LCT captains are nervous about getting any closer. They decide to launch. Not at 5,000 yards, as the British did in the calmer waters of Sword, but here, at 10,000 yards, nearly 6 miles from shore. Launch 'em! The order is given. The ramp on LCT 600 drops. The 1st DD tank, commanded by Lieutenant Roswell N. Windy B. Hart, lurches down into the churning Atlantic. Its canvas screen holds, but only just. The tank wallows, its propellers biting, but it's dangerously low in the water. The next tank follows, and the next. What happens next is not a battle. It's a tragedy of physics. The 32-ton tanks are simply not buoyant enough to handle the open ocean. The 6-foot waves, one after another, crash over the top of the 7-foot canvas screens. The bilge pumps, designed to handle spray and small leaks, are instantly overwhelmed. Inside the hulls, the crews hear the terrifying sound of water rushing in around their feet. It rises to their knees in seconds, then their waists. "We're going down." One commander screams over the radio. "We're foundering." One by one, the tanks of the 741st are swallowed by the sea. The canvas screens collapse, and the 32-ton machines sink to the bottom of the channel in less than a minute. Men scramble to inflate their Mae West life vests, but many are trapped inside the sinking steel coffins. Of the 32 DD tanks launched by the 741st Battalion, 27 are lost to the sea. Only 5 make it to the beach. 2 are from Hart's LCT, and 3 from another that, seeing the disaster, disobeyed orders and pushed all the way to the shoreline. 6:36 hours. Omaha Beach. The first wave of the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions hits the sand, and the world ends. The massive pre-invasion aerial bombardment, which was supposed to pulverize the German defenses, completely missed. B-17 seconds, bombing through thick cloud cover, had delayed their drops to avoid hitting their own landing craft. Their entire payload of 13,000 bombs fell harmlessly, 3 miles inland. The veteran German 352nd Infantry Division, untouched and waiting in their concrete bunkers, looks down on the beach and opens fire. The sound is of 1,000 buzzsaws. MG-42 machine guns, Hitler's buzzsaws, scythe the air, Mortars and pre-sighted 88mm guns turn the 500-yard stretch of sand into a killing field. The American infantry are pinned. They are trapped behind the exact same obstacles that had doomed the Canadians at Dieppe, a deep, impassable bank of loose shingle gravel and a high concrete sea wall. And their tank support is at the bottom of the ocean. The few surviving tanks of the 741st and the tanks of the 743rd Battalion, which were landed directly on the beach, are alone. And they are standard Shermans. They have no flails. They run directly into German minefields and their tracks are blown off. They have no petard mortars. Their 75mm shells bounce off the thick concrete bunkers on the bluffs. They have no bobbins. They get stuck, tracks spinning uselessly, in the same loose shingle as the tanks at Dieppe. They have no AVRE bridges. They are channeled into killing zones, unable to cross anti-tank ditches. The American High Command, specifically General Omar Bradley, had scoffed at Hobart's Funnies. They were a circus act, a waste of time. He had placed his faith in air power and standard armour. Now, on the sands of bloody Omaha, his men are paying the price for that doctrine. Where the British on sword had a crab to clear a path, the Americans have a corporal on his stomach, shoving a Bangalore torpedo under barbed wire with his bare hands, praying he doesn't get cut in half. Where the Canadians on Juno had an AVRE to smash a seawall, the Americans have a team of engineers with satchel charges, cut down in a hail of crossfire before they can get close. Omaha Beach is Dieppe, magnified by 10. It is a vision of what all of D-Day was supposed to be, and what it would have been, without the 79th Armoured Division. The Funnies were not a novelty. They were the antidote to the Atlantic Wall, and on Omaha, the poison is everywhere. June 6, 1944, 14 hours. Hermanville-sur-Mer, inland from Sword Beach. The advance has stalled. The men of the King's Shropshire Light Infantry are pinned by a single, heavily fortified German strong-pointer, pre-war holiday home, its cellar reinforced with concrete, its windows sandbagged. An MG-42 and a 50mm anti-tank gun are covering the main crossroads, and they are tearing the British advance to shreds. The platoon commander, a young lieutenant with mud caked on his face, gets on the wireless. "Get me a funny. We need a crocodile. Now." The request goes up the chain. 10 minutes later, the ground begins to tremble. A Churchill Crocodile, towing its 400-gallon fuel trailer, clatters around a ruined wall. It ignores the pings of small arms fire. The infantry presses themselves into the ditches, not from fear of the Germans, but from awe of the tank. The Crocodile's main gun fires a ranging shot. Then, the flame gunner unleashes. A thick, cohesive jet of liquid fire bursts from the hull, soaring 100 yards and smashing into the front of the house. The 1,500-degree inferno vaporizes the sandbags. It pours through the machine gun slit like water. The 50mm gun fires once, wildly, and then stops. The flame gunner gives it another 3-second burst. The house explodes in fire. The mortar on the roof is silent. After a few seconds, 3 figures, their uniforms smouldering, run from the back of the building, hands high, screaming. The strong point is neutralized. The advance continues. All across the British and Canadian sectors, this same story is repeated. The 79th Armoured Division is not just a beach-clearing tool. It's the master key to unlocking Normandy. As the main battle tanks of the Guards' Armoured Division, the same men who had laughed at Hobart's circus push inland, they are preceded by the Funnies. Sherman crabs flail the roads to clear them of mines. AVREs drop bridges over blown-out culverts and rivers. The 79th is the combat engineering vanguard for the entire 21st Army Group. Back on Omaha, the breakthrough is finally, agonizingly, achieved. It's not an engineered victory. It's a victory of human cost. It's won by naval destroyers sailing so close to shore their keels risk hitting the sand, firing their 5-inch guns point-blank at the bluffs. It's won by small groups of infantry, led by officers like Colonel George Taylor, who famously roared, "Two kinds of people are staying on this beach, the dead and those who are going to die. Now let's get the hell out of here." They climb the bluffs by hand. They take the bunkers with grenades and guts. By nightfall, they have a fragile toehold, bought with the blood of over 2,400 American casualties. The lesson is written in the tide, stark and undeniable. The British and Canadians, landing on heavily fortified beaches, used specialized tools to solve specialized problems. Their casualties, while heavy, were a fraction of what was projected. The Americans, landing on a similarly fortified beach, used conventional tools and paid the conventional price, a butcher's bill that mirrored Dieppe. In the days that followed, the most in-demand units in Normandy were not the crack paratroopers or the elite tank divisions. It was Hobo's circus. American commanders, their doctrine shattered on the shingle of Omaha, quietly and urgently began requesting 79th Division attachments for their own operations. Major General Percy Hobart, the Madman, the failed officer, had been vindicated. His menagerie of mechanical monsters, born from the catastrophe of Dieppe and mocked by the military establishment, had proven to be the single most decisive technological factor in the success of D-Day. The Funnies were not a sideshow. They were the difference between a foothold and a bloodbath. They were the keys that unlocked the Atlantic Wall, ensuring that June 6, 1944, would be remembered as the beginning of the end and not as the second and final Dieppe.